Hey, good morning and welcome to the Community Connect Immigration Rights and Resources webinar presented by Destination Madison, Downtown Madison Inc., and the Madison Bid. We are going to get started here with the presentation. Before we do, there are a couple of notes. We will take questions throughout the webinar. You notice in the bottom there is a Q&A panel down there so that you can type in questions. These questions will not be seen outside of the panelists. You are welcome to use your name in those questions when you ask, or you can also put mark yourself as anonymous in those questions. Some of the questions we will interrupt the speakers if they are related to what they're talking about at the moment. Otherwise, we will wait till the end to have a full Q&A. And with that, I would like to welcome L.A. Westman Chen to introduce the webinar.
Great. Thank you, Rob. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning for this really important and timely conversation. I also want to thank our partners with the BID and with DMI for coming on board and doing this with us. As a partner of Destination Madison, we have been hearing from you, we have been speaking with you, and we have heard over and over, what do we do if? What if we do if ICE shows up? What do we do, with a lot of different things after the if? And so a couple weeks ago, we created our resource page as a way of saying, if you have questions, here are resources that you can tap into. And so I'm very excited to welcome Fabiola and Jennifer and Karen to really dive into that even deeper to give a better understanding of what we can do whenever things happen or if things happen in our community. So I appreciate not only you join us as a participant of the webinar, but I really appreciate our three panelists coming on board and joining us today. So before we truly kick it off, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Trammell with the BID to say a few words as well.
Well, thanks, Ellie, and good morning, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Just wanted to quickly share a few facts about Madison Central Business Improvement District, or the BID, just for context. So the boundaries of the BID really are State Street from the Capitol all the way down to Library Mall, Capitol Square, and the donut that is around Capitol Square. And then King Street, which is, of course, in the First Settlement District neighborhood. But really, the small businesses in the BID are the beating heart of downtown Madison, bringing together all ages, ethnicities, and cultures to the center of our downtown. And to give you some sense about the numbers that we're talking about, there are 372 small businesses in the BID. 173 of those are essentially food and drink. That makes up 46%. 72 of those businesses are retail, or 19%. And then there's 127 service businesses, or 34%. So again, with that number of small businesses, really the success and sustainability of those small businesses and their employees is really critically important to the health of our overall community. So, with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists today, and we're really very fortunate to have their expertise with us on the line. First, Fabiola Hamdan is the Immigration Affairs Supervisor at the Dane County Department of Human Services. Fabiola has been connecting individuals to immigration information, asylum services, and safety resources in Dane County for more than 25 years. She'll acknowledge common fears employees face, give guidance on avoiding misinformation, and provide practical safety steps. Jennifer Johnson is an attorney with Boardman and Clark. She specializes in family law and will share straightforward, actionable guidance for businesses, from establishing clear protocols and communication strategies to connecting with immigration attorneys. And finally, Karen Mendez-Collar is Executive Director of Centro Hispano. Centro Hispano believes in Esperanza, or hope, as a foundation for all of its activities. Karen will share information about Centro's immigration services for individuals and families, including a robust page in English and Spanish that includes know your rights information, family safety, and more. Thank you again for your opportunity today to speak with you. Now I'd like to turn it over to our first speaker, Fabiola Hamdan.
Good morning, buenos dias. What a great day to do a webinar because the weather outside is that it's gloomy, and here we are. Thank you so much for the invitation to be in this panel and share a little bit of my experience. So again, Fabiola Hamden. I am immigrated to this country about 37 plus years ago from La Paz, Bolivia, and proud Badger. I got my master's degree at UW-Madison. My husband also got his degree there, and now two sons are also Badgers. So we're the Badger family, and very proud to live in Madison, and Wisconsin, which we call home. So this presentation is sort of a highlight of the things that I see as a social worker in the Department of Human Services. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges the people that we serve are coming to our offices, and some other challenges for employees, as how to communicate better, and also I'm sharing some resources that I think it's very important to have for everybody. So with that, let me just go to the next slide. And this is general, right? So, a lot of issues faced by immigrant communities. It is very important for us to know that the immigrant community, have different immigration status. We have asylum seekers, we have the undocumented individuals, we have people in the pathway to citizenship, and refugees, and all of that. So I'm glad that we have an immigration attorney here today. So if you have some questions, I'm sure she'll answer those. I think, I'm just going to highlight a few of those. The immigration status, real or perceived. It's really something that we need to think about when we work, or when we have people in our community that do not have documentation. It is, I always tell people, it's like you're walking with a black cloud on yourself, because we have people here for many, many years that are contributing so much to our economy that do not have documentation. And it's really important to acknowledge that for these folks, there are not public assistance like housing, Medicare, food share, Section 8, etc. So they are not able to access the services. Sometimes we hear otherwise, especially in the media. And unaware of U.S. laws and rules. And I always say that, if all of us in this group, we go to, I don't know, Germany or China, we're not going to be acquainted with laws, and we're not going to be acquainted with rules and things like that. So that takes a process, and I just wanted to mention that. Also, many people do not have driver's license or IDs just because of their immigration status, and that's really very important to talk about, because you, me, everybody else, we are going to be driving in the same streets, and if you do not have access to get your driver's license, it's really safety. And I think it is very important for everybody that chooses to live in this country or this community. Really, let's have them to get this access to driver's license. We hear a lot about exploitation at work, language barriers, right? Again, if we go to China, we don't know how to communicate ourselves, and that's huge barrier for a lot of not only undocumented immigrants, but also asylum seekers, refugees, people that come with different visas. And this has serious implications in a family intervention when working with victims that refuse to call the police. If you're afraid that you may have, if you're undocumented or in the process of doing your the path of immigration, you really are very careful not to get into trouble, And sometimes we have people that are victims of domestic violence or other victims. They really are afraid to call the police because the police for many immigrant communities in their countries or our countries are different than it's here. And we always try to tell people that law enforcement is here to keep us safe. So we should be calling the police, but you can imagine, that's a barrier. Lack of social support, right? I mean, you leave all your friends, your family back home. Here you're starting your life again. No, I already said knowledge of services available. Many people distrust of institutions. It's always I see people that we work with in our office with this chronic stress, financial pressure. I mean, housing right now, it's so expensive, and then you have this job that does not pay very much, and children, so this financial pressure is always there. Lack of health insurance. Many people don't have insurance, even if they are working, many hours. And that's health insurance in our country is really a challenge, right? So not having one, it's really huge barrier, right? We're lucky here in Dane County or Madison, we have a couple of clinics that take people with the sliding fees. It's not free. So at least we have that. And I always hear people telling me that they feel like a criminal sometimes because of not having their immigration status set. So this is just kind of a little bit of a highlight of a lot of the things that we see in our office when we work with people with the immigrant community. So the next slide. A lot of the concerns as far as the workers, right? Sometimes, so I put a few here. There are many more than this. But for example, DACA status or DACA recipients, they are still undocumented. This is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival that President Obama put it an executive order a long time ago. Right now, it is still in the limbo. I'm not going to go into that. We have the immigration attorney. She can explain a little bit better than me. But if I am a DACA recipient, I have to renew my DACA and work permit every 2 years. All right. So we have a lot of people that are working in different in the university law offices. And when the time comes to renew your DACA, sometimes the USCIS or the immigration office takes a long time to process that. If you do not have that renewal on time, then your employer will say, okay, you have to stop working, and we need to have your permit. And so it goes with the driver's license. So that's really a huge concern. We have a lot of people calling us from hospitals saying, I put my renewal in October and I didn't get it. And next week, they told me to bring that and I don't have it. So really a lot of young people, especially that are right now in the workforce, are really worried about that. Same thing with the TPS, which is the employees temporary protection status. I think same thing. You have to renew that, and now with when the executive order, we hear that that's going to be terminated for I don't know how many 300,000 Venezuelans and all of that. So what happens now if you have your employee that has this legal document to work, then if it is terminated, what are you going to do? A lot of things are up in the air. Employees that come with F1, F2 visas, student visas, they cannot work a lot of hours. And I think for all of you that are employing people, just embedded yourself with information about how many hours, what can they do, and all of that. I don't want to talk too much. I think, tell me when my time is up. All right.
We'll give you one more minute, Fabiola, to wrap things up here.
All right. accessing accurate information is super important. Here, I'm just going to say that you need to really follow up Centro Hispanos and Voces de la Frontera channels of communication because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I have those in my resources. What our next slide? What does our immigration we're social workers and we provide case management, community outreach presentations like today. We really refer people to legal services. We have a little bit of budget to maybe assist with rent, housing, and all of that we can. And we do not here, we cannot help with people that do not have immigration matters really with us. We only are 4 social workers in this small unit. So that's kind of in the nutshell what we do. I'm sure you're going to be receiving this next slide. You're going to be receiving this presentation, but check out these resources that I'm sharing with you. I think it's very important to see. In the bottom, you're going to see, where to find an immigration attorney. Anything that nowadays we can find it online. So sorry, I took a little bit longer, but I think with that I'm going to end. And thanks again for the opportunity to present.
Right. I'm going to throw one question your way, Fabiola, that came in. In what ways have challenges increased since the start of 2025? There's a great worry, but how do we understand if it's founded in real and new barriers?
I mean, it is huge, right? Even for people that have their immigration status, the challenges of not feel safe to go to work, the challenges where you hear ICE presence and deportations and all of that, it really makes people afraid of accessing services, sometimes sending the kids to school, sometimes not even going to work. If you see in social media that ICE presence is here and downtown or Woodman's or whatever, then you're not going to want to go to work. So that fear is so real and so out there that I think that's why we are working together with Centro Hispano, CELC, and other organizations to really assure the community, stay in in contact with these good resources. And I think, we see a lot of people calling us all the time with a lot of these fears. Should I go to work? Should I go shopping? Or should I go to the doctor? So that's huge. I don't know if that answered the question.
Thank you, Fabiola. We have a couple other questions in the chat, which I think will either be answered in Jennifer's presentation or Jennifer can answer throughout the course or at the end of her presentation. So we'll get started with Jennifer. And again, feel free to put questions into the chat and we will have those answered by the speaker when Jennifer wraps up.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am Jennifer Johnson. I'm Senior Legal Counsel at Boardman Clark, where I specialize in immigration and family law, and a lot where immigration and family law meet. So if you think of like special immigrant juvenile visa petitions and international Hague cases. Since January 2020, my immigration practice has really began focusing on what if ICE comes to your business? What if ICE comes to your school? And how should people respond to that type of situation? Because we're in relatively new territory here since the beginning of this year. So given all of the businesses that are likely on this call, what I want to focus on is how you can prepare your workplace for immigration enforcement visits, okay? Now, a general and very important disclaimer. My presentation today is not intended as legal advice. Immigration matters are extremely and inherently very complex. Each situation has unique factors and considerations, so please consult with a qualified immigration attorney for specific questions pertaining to your particular circumstances. And I just want to be clear right out of the bat, I have done now since the start of the year, probably a handful of protocols for different companies, different businesses. ICE has shown up at some of them. We've had to field those calls, and each situation is particular and unique, and there are going to be times of doubt. That's very normal. So make sure that you do have legal counsel that you can call should something happen in your case. Okay, so general introduction. Immigration enforcement visits can be really stressful and complex. And that feels obvious, but the point I really want to hit home is that the intent of them is to be stressful and complex. Because if ICE or immigration enforcement shows up at your business and they don't have a legitimate warrant or they don't have a legitimate subpoena, if you consent to what they're asking, that's just as valid for them to then gain that information and do what they want to do. So intimidation is kind of part of what they're using to hopefully gain the information without having to go through the proper legal procedure and protocol to legally obtain that information from you. Okay? Proper preparation in your business is absolutely essential. What I'm referring to here is any I-9s. So if you have any I-9s within your company, make sure that they are completely up to date. Make sure that you are conducting internal audits. We'll get into more detail as I get into my presentation. And then also consult with an immigration attorney for specific guidance. The best thing you can do to prepare for ICE is to be proactive. So each business is different. So the legal advice that you're going to get to protect your business is going to be specific to you. Call an immigration attorney ahead of time to be like, hey, this is the issues we have going on. These are the specific fears. These are the specific issues we want to address. What's the best way for us to do that and to be prepared if this should happen? Key preparation steps are going to be three main things. First, establish physical boundaries. Second, designate authority. And third, maintain your proper I-9 compliance for your business. Okay. So first with physical boundaries, mark all of your non-public areas as private. If your business has specific like key cards set up where people can only access if they have a key card or a fob, that's great. If your business doesn't have that, it's okay. Buy some signs on Amazon. Make some signs, print them off on your computer that clearly mark specific areas in your business as private. Because anything that's marked as private, ICE cannot go into without either your consent or a proper warrant. Okay? If you mark it private, that creates a legal boundary for the enforcement. And ICE can maybe push through, right? They can push through. They can say, okay, hey, thanks for your objections. We don't have a warrant. We're still going into it. That can happen and it can get litigated after the fact, but you have clearly marked your area as private. You clearly said, look, ICE, I don't consent you coming into this private space of my business, and you're not allowed to. And if they still do, then that's evidence that they can't realistically get into court or get into a proceeding later on, which is really important. Okay. Designate authority. So if ICE shows up, what they're likely doing is they didn't call you ahead of time. You don't know that this is a planned visit. They're showing up and they're typically going to deal with the front of house person, right? Be that a hostess, someone working at the front desk, whoever that person might be. But it's very likely that that individual is not going to be the primary person who's able to give consent on behalf of the business. Okay? So it's really important that you identify specific individuals who are authorized to interact with ICE or other immigration enforcement agents. Select individuals who can remain calm under pressure and they understand the protocol. The people who you pick to interact with ICE should receive some training. They should have also, if you're able, right, if the training and then also a bit of the personality profile that they're going to be able to stand up to somebody who is likely there to intentionally be intimidating and to very calmly interact with ICE and to say, hey, look, we want to be in full compliance with the law. Do you have a warrant with you? If so, great, let me see it. And then say, okay, great. I want to call my legal counsel, talk about this for a moment. We just want to make sure that we're in full compliance with the law. And likely I should reasonably wait, the 15 minutes, 20 minutes, what have you, that you need to go through your own proper protocols to make sure that you're compliant with a legitimate warrant, or it's not a legitimate warrant. And you can say to ICE, hey, you know what? Actually, this is an administrative warrant. It's not a judicial warrant. We don't need to comply with this. You don't have our consent. Please come back with a judicial warrant. Okay? It's important that you're able to get those key people put in place so that that front of house person, a hostess, what have you, is able to have the right phone numbers to contact your HR person or the owner, which for some businesses, right, the owner is the HR person and like where the buck stops your person, and that falls to them. But you want to make sure that your employees are able to reach the correct person to be making very big, crucial decisions on behalf of your business and company, and that it just doesn't fall to that initial person that ICE interacts with when they first walk in the door. Okay. And make sure that everybody knows within your company who has the authority to interact. Like they understand, hey, ICE shows up. We're not going to have the person at the front of house be dealing with that individual. We know to call XYZ individual and that they're going to be here in a timely fashion. I-9 compliance is so important. So just a few tips for I-9 compliance. So keep all of your I-9 forms current, properly completed, and stored separately from personnel files. Implement a regular schedule for internal audits of your I-9 records. Right now, given the heat of this whole situation, I'd recommend quarterly identifying all of your I-9s. Conduct a formal review with trained staff or outside counsel. If your HR individuals have never had any I-9 trainings whatsoever, it's not likely that they're going to be able to conduct a very thorough inspection of your own I-9s. Get outside counsel to help you figure that out. Because the last thing you want to have happen is ICE shows up and they're requesting, an I-9 for a specific individual, or they show up with a notice of inspection, right? Which they don't even need a warrant or a subpoena to ask for. And you now have 3 business days to find these I-9s and get them over to ICE. You want to make sure that all of these things are in order before there's ever a request given. Okay. Staff protocols. So this is going back to that front of house person or that initial contact person for ICE. Have some type of language. Language I'm recommending is for that initial point person to say is, hey, I'm not authorized to give consent. The person authorized to do so, and they've been notified and they are on their way. And we want to make sure that we are in full compliance with the law. Just reassert that to ICE so that they understand, hey, I want to comply with the law, but I want to make sure that we're not giving over any employee information, that we don't actually have a legal warrant, for us to give that information over. For authorized representatives, when your individual who is, authorized to interact with ICE and does have the ability to provide consent or take the warrant and look at it, they need to make sure that they are professional and courteous. Be nice. Nothing ever hurts anybody from just being nice and kind and respectful. Express a willingness to comply with legal requirements. This is massively important, right? Regardless of however you feel about the law, you do have to make sure that you are in fact complying with the law. And request to review any documentation. So for example, your designated representatives, they show up, ICE officers are there, you're like, hey, hi, how can we best assist you guys today? And they're like, oh, well, we actually, want to talk to this individual and we believe that they're employed here. And you would say, okay, do you have a warrant? They might say yes or no. And if they do have a warrant and they hand it to you, take a look at it, say, hey, I just want a few minutes to call legal counsel and we'll get right back to you. Try and minimize any type of inflammatory behavior that might come to the situation, because the other practical reality here outside of the legal issues is that this is happening at your business, at your place of work, at your livelihood. I don't think anybody wants this to be something that becomes abrupt, disruptive, that's going to affect your clientele, your patrons, what have you. Okay, so understanding the different kinds of documentation that ICE can bring with them, all right? So first, if ICE shows up with no documentation, they're just like, hey, we're here and we want to question a specific employee of yours. You are not at all required to comply with what they're asking whatsoever, okay? Now, there could be potential fallout of this, right? If ICE is coming and they want to talk to a specific individual and you say, do you have a warrant? Do you have a subpoena? Do you have anything? They say no. They're like, look, thanks, but would you please come back with a judicial warrant? They might do that, and they might come back with a warrant asking to speak to 9 different people, or they might come back with an NOI. I think that ICE could in fact be retaliatory. I don't know for sure, but it's something that could absolutely, come about. And so sometimes it does make sense just to, if they're asking for something really simple and you have that information and it's just easy to provide it, sometimes that's the easier path. But again, it's situation specific, which is why it's so important to discuss it with legal counsel typically, who can tell you, okay, these are the risks you're incurring by denying, but these are the risks if you comply. If
gonna
ICE shows
ask
up with, oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question. We have a lot of questions for you, but
I
one
bet.
kind of
Yeah, yeah.
in documentation in particular, can you talk about the use of Blackie's warrants and how they can be used if ICE is on a fishing expedition?
I can get into that's like not part of my presentation at all, but I guess what do they mean by that? Sorry.
That was
Like,
just the question that, in addition to judicial warrant, asking about Blackie's warrants and, how ICE can use that if they're trying to maybe investigate your business.
so sure. So when they're saying black, do they mean like administrative immigration warrants that are typically not very valid?
That is what I am assuming. It's a very narrow question. So
I can get into that really quick. So okay, so if there's an administrative warrant, so judicial warrants you have to comply with. These are things that are signed by either a federal or state judge, okay? But an administrative warrant is usually something that's signed by an immigration officer or somebody who works at USCIS or an immigration judge. And those you typically do not have to comply with. They don't require the same level of reasonable suspicion that's required with a judicial warrant. But what I want people to be concerned about here with administrative warrants or immigration or administrative warrants is that I wouldn't want anyone to invoke any sort of harboring charges. So, for example, let's say ICE shows up to a business and they say, hey, we're here with this administrative warrant. We want this specific information. And the authorized personnel of that business says, actually, we don't want to comply. Come back with a judicial warrant. Okay. And then ICE does. They come back with a judicial warrant and they get the information. Now, if that business owner, that business owner representative of the business who had worked with ICE should have reasonably known that the individual that ICE was coming to kind of ask questions about may have some status issues or some other issues, that can then invoke harboring charges. And that's why the I-9s and making sure that they're in full compliance is so drastically important. Because if your I-9s are not in order for that specific individual, that's a complete paper trail that's going to be very easily to be discovered. They can find information out about that. So that's why you don't have to comply with an administrative warrant, but make sure that all of your I-9s and ducks are in a row in case they come back with the judicial warrant, and then they can get all that information back from you through discovery. Okay. Is that helpful? Okay. Okay, great. Are there any other questions, Rob, or should I keep going?
Yes, there are a lot of questions. So figured since you were on documentation, we would answer that one. We can save these or have 3 or 4 I-9 specific questions if you want to answer them now or wait till the end.
I'll just get through this because maybe it'll be answered. Maybe they'll get answered. Okay. Okay, thanks. So if ICE shows up with a state or federal subpoena, there's a 14-day window to comply. Subpoenas are easier because they don't they require statutorily you have 14 days to comply. So it's not as immediate as, let's say, a search warrant or a warrant for arrest. And then a notice of inspection, an NOI, that's where ICE can show up with an NOI, which requires that they can see your I-9s. Now, ICE does not need a warrant or a subpoena for this information whatsoever. They can simply show up, show the notice of inspection, and businesses have 3 business days to comply with getting whatever information ICE is asking for regarding the I-9s. Identifying documents. So look for warrant or subpoena in the title. Judicial warrant is issued by a state, federal court, signed by a judge. Administrative warrants are going to have Department of Homeland Security branding, and they're going to have the form numbers I-200 or I-205 somewhere on the document. These are just some examples that I found of different search and seizure warrants that are actually legitimate, so that people could just have copies of them if they want to take a minute to review those. And I believe that, Rob, people should have access to these slides, correct? So they can review these later if they like. Okay. Okay, good. So just to go over it, a judicial warrant must be issued by a state or federal court. In Wisconsin, we have the Eastern or the Western districts for federal courts. Those are the only 2 federal courts here in the state of Wisconsin. And also make sure that you're either in the Western or the Eastern district if you get served a subpoena. If you're in the Western district and you get served a warrant from the Eastern district, you can say this doesn't apply to me. Come back and get get the right district to actually pertain to me. And again, that's gonna weigh the issue of, okay, well, if they already got the judicial warrant, do we want to comply now, or like kind of kick the hornet's nest, if you will, and they're just going to come back to get the information in a couple of weeks. The administrative immigration warrant. So this is just more of the judicial warrants. And this is going to be an example of a warrant from Homeland Security. So this is going to be the administrative or immigration warrant. Okay. And then this is a subpoena from the United States District Court. Again, like I said earlier, you have 14 days to respond to a subpoena, so they're less immediate than if ICE is showing up with a warrant for arrest or a warrant to seize documents, immediately right in the moment. And then these are just the federal rules of civil procedure that outline the statutes giving you the time to reply to subpoenas. And immigration enforcement subpoena. So this is a subpoena that is issued by DHS. So immigration. So again, this is something you should not technically have to comply with, but again, consult with your attorney and you would have 14 days to reply to this also. This is just a really nice breakdown of judicial warrants versus the immigration or administrative warrants that clearly highlights this is what a valid judicial warrant looks like and what you should look for. And then here is what an administrative or immigration warrant looks like and what you should look for to kind of gauge your ability or willingness to comply with the particular warrant. And then the same with subpoenas. So practical logistics. Keep legal team contact information readily available. Ensure that multiple key people can reach counsel if they need to, and follow your internal established protocols. The last thing you want to have happen is have ICE show up and no one knows what to do or how to properly respond. You want to have the chain of command. You want to know who should be contacted and at what point, and you want to make sure that your front of house staff can very clearly communicate, I don't have the authority, I don't have the consent, but the people that do are on their way to ensure that we're in full compliance with the law. And again, maintain the professional composer piece. And I reiterate that so much because I think it's, it's very practical knowledge. It feels very obvious of like, yes, remain calm. But when you're in a situation where you have armed people who are saying, hey, we need this information and we need it now, it's very unsettling. And it requires, a lot of forethought and a bit of practice, if you will, to make sure that you maintain calmness in that more high stress situation. In conclusion, the preparation and proper response significantly will impact the outcome of if ICE comes to your business. When in doubt, contact your immigration attorney, and there will be times that you'll have doubt. It's just part of this process as we're all navigating this new space that we're living in. And proper preparation will protect your business and provide absolute peace of mind to you, your employees, and likely your patrons. And that's all. So if there are questions now, I'm happy to take them, Rob.
All right. There are a number of questions. I'll try to group them thematically. So a couple of questions about the private locations in businesses. One, I'll ask them together since they would probably be able to be answered collectively. But one is, does employees only equate to private? Two is, if we are in a privately owned building and the entire building is designated as private, does that count even if they have a public area such as a lobby? So I guess could you drill down a little bit on that definition of what is a private space?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the idea of private space harkens back to Fourth Amendment rights. And if an entire building is considered private, but there is a lobby that's considered a public space, right? That lobby is going to be a public space. So ICE can come in, sit in your parking lot, okay? ICE can walk into that lobby area of your business, but they should not be able to go to any other part of the business that is going to be private. And now, what will also make that even more clear is if there is key card access or fob access to the rest of the building that you can't enter into unless you have that access, right? As far as employees only, that's a little bit of, no, I would mark it private. I wouldn't have signs up that just simply say employees only. I wouldn't say, oh, it's obvious. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Bloom Bake Shop over on Monroe Street, right? But when you walk in, there used to be the whole seating area, and now there isn't. Like, you just walk in and there's the clear counter to pick up the bakery items, and there's where everything's getting baked, and there's just space to walk in. It's pretty intuitive that you'd walk into that space and think, okay, behind the counter is going to be a private area, private space, and back where they're baking all the delicious things is going to be a private counter or private space. But clearly label it, right? Where there is an entry point to go behind a counter, where there's an entry point to go into a kitchen, label it private space so everybody knows. So it's really clear. So ICE sure as hell knows if they walk into your business and they're like, oh, there isn't a label here that says it private, and it's not intuitive to me that I shouldn't go into your kitchen. You know, clearly label it as private. It's what should be obvious, but it's quite a bit of just covering your bases and making it irrevocably clear. And also, if ICE does show up and they get to be, you know, they didn't come with a warrant and they don't have your consent, but they still go through it and you're videoing this happening, it's lovely to have it be videoed and to see, oh, they're clearly going through a space that's clearly marked private when they didn't have authority to do so and they didn't have our consent.
Okay, and we have some couple of other questions on ICE visits and accompanying them. You know, must they be accompanied by a staff member at all times while they're there? Should a staff member be there to help advocate, facilitate language barriers, etc.? I think you covered it, but I could use some reiteration.
Sure, absolutely. Those are good questions. So, yes, make sure if ICE shows up, make sure that you have a staff member there the whole time and likely videoing the interaction if that staff member feels comfortable doing so. You have every right to be watching what's happening. And also, you know, another piece here that's important is let's say that ICE does show up with a valid judicial warrant and there are clearly labeled spaces for them to search and to seize items. That warrant only allows them to go into those specific spaces that are listed on the warrant to search and then to seize those items. It does not give them the right to go into every nook and cranny of that specific business and find other information. If they decide to go into any other space that's not listed on the warrant, and the authorized person acting on behalf of that business provides consent for them to do so, then it's valid. But you don't need to provide consent for them to do that. So absolutely have that trained staff member walk around with them, show them, say, hey, okay, you have a judicial warrant. We see that it's valid. Let me either bring these documents to you or take you to the specific space that is listed in the warrant to be searched.
Couple of I-9 questions. If we have our I-9s saved through payroll digitally, what would you recommend to show to ICE if they have an appropriate warrant and want to see them?
Print it off. Print that off. Or maybe there's something where you could have it, you know, hand over an electric file. But again, that's not something that if that's subpoenaed, you're going to have a little bit of time to respond and get that information. If it's an actual like search and seize warrant or they show up with an NOI, that's something that, yeah, you would need to print off or give a digital. I don't even think people use flash drives anymore. So either send it to them or print it off right there.
Right, we'll do a couple more questions and then turn it over to Karen here. If we have a contracted cleaning service, so we are not the ones with the I-9s. How would our business deal with ICE if they come for that cleaning service when they're on your site? Direct them to see the contractor. What steps would you take with that?
That's an excellent question. So, okay, is this individual concerned that this cleaning company is at their business cleaning and then ICE shows up to deal with one of the cleaners who are in their business in their space?
Yes.
Whew. That would be a situation where, yes, I would recommend that they talk to the contractor because it's not like the business should be responsible. The business where those individuals are cleaning would be responsible for verifying any kind of I-9 for someone who's not their employee, right? At all. So that would be something where they would need to go back to the actual contracted cleaning company who should have all that information.
Okay. And then a couple other I-9 questions. Is there a place people can have guidance about I-9 training and how to identify what a warrant is, and if you need to have I-9s on hand. Also, if ICE is conducting an I-9 audit, um, do you have to have those copies of those documents ready for them? I think you've answered it, but one more reiteration.
Sure. So if ICE shows up with a notice of inspection, you have 3 business days to get your I-9s over to ICE. That's why it's so important that you would have all your I-9s in like good order. Really right now is the time to do that. You don't want to not be looking at your I-9s, then ICE shows up and you're like, oh, we got to get them in order. That's not going to be helpful. So you'll have 3 business days if they show up with a notice of inspection. And yes, your I-9s are something that you should have on hand and accessible and ready to hand over to ICE if they come with it and ask for them. And then there was a handful of questions there, Rob. I don't know if I answered all of them. I'm sorry if I didn't.
I think you did. They all kind of fell
Okay.
under that umbrella. Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, everyone.
Karen, we will turn it over to you, and we will again save some questions for you, Karen, and if there is time at the end for the group, but go ahead and walk through your presentation, Karen.
Sure. Just, because we've been going, wanted to pause for just a brief second, because I know there was a question about how urgent is this? Is this something, you hear about it in the news? Is this really a risk? And through that presentation that Jennifer just walked us through, if you can take a moment just to feel the energy in your body, and I'm assuming the anxiety, fear, like, oh my gosh, we have to do all these things. That is something that our families carry day in and day out. So, there's a couple of pieces to this whole complex issue. One is, yes, as employers, certainly having everything in order and making sure that your business thrives is a necessity. Also understanding that these are families and these are people that are working in your business because they believe in the beauty of this country and that this is deserving of all of us. So Centro has been a longstanding organization. We've been around for 40 plus years. We have a mission that focuses on young people and families and communities. And really, our shared values focus on connection, not only across the Latinx community, but across Greater Dane County, Greater Madison. We believe in mutual respect and dignity. We believe in courage and we believe in integrity. I always like to start with a picture because there are families at Centro that I've had the privilege of knowing for close to 15 years now. Fabiola's family is one of them, and it's always an honor for me to start anything, to be a part of anything where she's involved, because if you don't know of her family, her history, everything that she has done for this community, that's somebody that you should know. I also want to say that our mission is wide, and that is because when it comes to government, city, county, traditional systems, our community has been growing significantly, the fastest growing community in Madison, Dane County, and the entire state. But institutions are catching up. So at Centro, we really believe in quality programming. Probably 2 of the areas that I'm most passionate about are our youth work. We do extensive youth programming throughout the community and our workforce and career pathways, because we believe different sectors need to be reflective of our families and what we bring to the table. So on average, we see about 7,000 plus individuals each year. We tend to about 2,000 calls each month, 100,000 plus hours of programming a year. This is extensive, but that's because of all those different pieces that Fabi identified in her presentation. And all of those pieces, our families, our community, need support in that. So we can wait for systems to catch up, or we can decide that we want to do some work to make sure that we don't get left behind. We're a hub for collaboration. I trust my partners in the work. On the left-hand side, you see a picture of myself with all of the different people that I trust 1,000% to do the work for community here. This was when we wanted to come together and share that there needs to be data about our families that drives initiatives, businesses, development, vision for the city and the county. And we held our own press conferences and shared the information. This was many years ago. And most recent, the last time that we were dealing with these issues under the past Trump administration, when we had ICE raids here in Dane County. And we all stood together at Centro, and we said that we were going to organize and make sure that if this were to happen again, that we were going to have a structure for that. So it's a space of coming together in more scary times, but also in times of hope and thinking about the future. We believe in building social capital because of what Fabi said. Social support is hard to come by for our families. So we believe that we need to create networks of individuals that can come together in a space and feel like they can thrive because it can be their full self. So then they can go to work and make sure that they're as present as possible. So I wanted to highlight just some of the resources that I think Matt pointed out to. And as Fabiola said, there is an immigration enforcement response team here in Dane County. And together, different members are tasked with different pieces. So we have a very tight network that monitors ICE activity in the area. One thing that you should know is that since the last administration, President Trump, we have had ICE activity in Dane County. That shouldn't be anything new. And I know that right now, as we're thinking about a crisis point, we're preparing for it, but ICE has always been around. So it's something that we've had to deal with. Sometimes you go to Facebook and there's rumors about like ICE is over here, ICE is over there. They may or may not be. That's been part of what we've had to deal with for a while now. But what we want to monitor is if there's increased enforcement, if there's heightened presence of ICE doing raids, things like that. Through this group, there are also Know Your Rights trainings that are put on in the community and also virtually. There's coordination of legal defense. We're creating a network that's going to be there and respond as needed, hopefully statewide, so that our families can feel taken care of and so that you as business owners know that there's activity that's happening to make sure that your employees are safe. As Matt mentioned, there's a community resource page on our website at Centro. That's the link right there. Together, the Immigration Enforcement Response Team keeps it up to date. There's crucial details there about making emergency preparedness plans, a video about Know Your Rights, things to do if ICE shows up, documentation, different pieces. And that's going to be constantly updated as the situation changes. Some of you may know this, but there is a United Way Law Enforcement Leaders of Color Coalition collaborative that has met regularly since the last time this happened. And actually before that. But the goal of that group is to really create community and conversation with law enforcement throughout Dane County and members of the community. Some of the IERT members are part of Voces de la Frontera. They're doing in-person trainings and workshops. And at Centro, one thing that we're really thinking about is how we can support the group with power of attorney and guardianship. When people have questions, when it may not be enough to go to a clinic and get paperwork filled out. But when individuals may need more one-on-one attention when they're filling out parental power of attorneys for their kids. Because last time this happened, families in this community were separated and we weren't prepared. So we want to make sure that they're taken care of this time. There's a whole Dane Sanctuary Coalition of faith-based organizations that last time were committed to providing sanctuary for families. This time they continue to have conversations about what their role will be in the response, but different members attend those meetings as well. And we have a partnership and conversations with the Mexican consulate in Milwaukee. And there's different initiatives that, have been floated. They do passports. I know that through Fabiola's office, there's collaboration there and different things that happen. So that's another network that we're involved with as a group. As far as things that you can do. So obviously, tend to your rights and understand things that you need to do for your business. Understand that there's a network of community members that are very deeply committed to this community and that are grounded in this community and that are guiding the effort. Support them. Support organizations. I'm going to say it outright right now, like Centro, the Community Immigration Law Center, groups that are really doing important work. And then also support an immigration defense fund that we're housing at Centro for holistic wraparound support for the community. So in Fabi's office, when anybody has a need related to legal defense, food, clothing, housing, all of that, we're going to have the resources to take care of our families. So, there's a business side of this, but there's also the fact that people might be impacted. Think about us as an ally, as a collaborator in this work and how we can work together. It'll make our job a lot easier as a city and I think as a community. We also have this amazing canvassing signs, which I'm really excited about because they're at Centro. You can stop by any time, put them in your yard, put them out your window, talk about like what this community means to you and how the Centro that happens at this hub that is Centro is really important for the work that you do. Put them outside your window and your businesses. Let your employees know that we're going to do what we can and we're also care about you. So stay connected to Centro and the community. I think that's all that I had.
All right.
turn it to
Thank
you.
you, Karen.
Sure.
We have about 2 minutes left. There's a couple of questions I'll ask real quick, and then we will wrap up. Is there a text or phone hotline for people in our area to call if a conflict happens with ICE?
There's an emergency response line that Voces de la Frontera has, and I can put it in the chat, I guess, if that's the easiest thing to do. Or I can send it
We
to
can
somebody.
also include that, Karen, in our follow-up email, which will have
Oh, that's right.
information with all these resources.
Okay.
And then a quick question coming back to Jennifer. If you sign the I-9 and you get an audit and they are fake papers that the person presented to you, who is liable for that? Is your business liable? Are you liable?
Yeah, it's something that you reasonably should have vetted and known. So you're saying that if someone shows like a fake, I'm just trying to understand the question, like if someone shows a fake LPR card or green card,
Right.
yeah, that's
Yep, and
something
you
that
sign
should have
off on them.
correct. That should have been verified. Yeah, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with E-Verify, but E-Verify is an excellent online forum that can take care of a lot of issues with I-9s also.
All right. Well, we are at time. I'd like to thank all of the presenters. Some fantastic information that was shared. Again, we will send out an email to all attendees with links to these resources. And thank you again for attending in this very important subject in this very critical time. So with that, we will say goodbye and look forward to seeing that email come to your inbox very soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.